Hello, everyone, and welcome. Have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered if we could just, make it rain? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're talking about cloud seeding, a topic that's not just fascinating science, but a super hot topic for your upcoming exams. We're going to break down the science, the controversy, and everything you absolutely need to know.
And this isn't just some theoretical question, right? With Delhi's air quality recently hitting some really scary levels, the government announced a pretty radical plan to literally try and wash the smog out of the sky with man-made rain. So the big question is this a brilliant solution, or is it a massive scientific gamble? Let's find out.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off with the big news from Delhi. Then we'll rewind a bit and cover the basic science of how rain even forms. From there, we'll get into the cool tech used to hack the weather, weigh all the pros and cons, and look at how India has used this technology in the past. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with the key exam takeaways you've been waiting for.
All right, so let's get right into it. What exactly is going on in the capital? Well, faced with a really severe pollution crisis, the Delhi government, working together with IIT Kanpur, decided to try something pretty drastic. Its first ever cloud seeding operation to literally try and clean the air with rain.
Now take a look at this timeline, because the urgency here is just incredible. On October 23rd, the exact same day Delhi's air quality index hit a nasty 322, they conducted a successful test flight. They were ready to go for the real thing just a week later. The only thing they needed? Some clouds. This kind of rapid, real-world response makes it a perfect topic for a current affairs question.
Okay, before we can even begin to understand how to make rain, we first have to get how nature does it. And trust me, this basic science is absolutely critical, not just for this topic, but for your whole environment and geography syllabus.
So, here's the most important thing to get. Clouds don't just form out of thin air and pure water vapor. Nope. Water vapor needs a tiny little particle, a seed, to grab onto. These are called cloud condensation nuclei, or CCN for short. Think of them as the secret ingredient. You have to remember this term, CCN. It's a very high probability keyword for your prelims.
And that right there explains what cloud seeding really is. So you're not creating clouds from scratch. You're just giving the clouds that are already there a little helping hand. You do that by adding extra artificial seeds to make the whole rainmaking process a bit more efficient. We're essentially giving nature a gentle nudge.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the technology. How do scientists actually go about hacking the weather and seeding these clouds? Well, there are a few key methods that you absolutely need to know.
This table is basically a perfect cheat sheet for a mains answer. First, you've got static seeding. This usually uses something like silver iodide in cold clouds to create more ice crystals. Then there's dynamic seeding, which is a lot more ambitious. It tries to boost the cloud's own internal energy, making it grow bigger and process more water. And finally, you have hygroscopic seeding, which uses simple salts like table salt in warmer clouds to help tiny water droplets bump into each other and grow big enough to fall as rain.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. Remembering all those different chemical agents, especially under exam pressure, can be really tough. So don't worry, I've got a simple little trick to help you lock this information in. It's super easy. Just think, you want to sip the rain. S is for silver iodide in salts, which are the most common ones you'll hear about. I is for another common one, potassium iodide. And P is for liquid propane, which is also used. See? A simple way to remember the key chemicals in cloud seeding.
All right, we know what it is, we know how it works, but now we come to the biggest question of all, the one that's going to require some critical thinking from you. Does this stuff actually work? And even if it does, is it worth it? This is where the great debate really begins.
So on one side, you have people who see this as a powerful scientific tool, a way to tackle some of humanity's biggest challenges, from droughts to pollution. But on the other hand, you have critics, including a lot of scientists, who call it an expensive, unproven gimmick that just distracts us from fixing the real root causes of these problems.
Now, this is the number you're going to see thrown around a lot. The claim from proponents is that a successful cloud seeding operation can boost rainfall by about 10 to 30%. That's a key data point you should definitely remember for your answers. But how reliable is that number?
Well, this quote right here from two professors at IIT Delhi gives you the perfect counterargument. They say, very clearly, that the scientific evidence is weak and it's highly contested. And the main reason for this whole debate is actually pretty simple. It's incredibly hard to prove whether a cloud that was seeded would have rained that much anyway. And that uncertainty is at the very heart of the controversy.
Still, despite all the debate, you can see why people are so interested. The list of potential applications is huge. We're talking about drought relief for farmers, boosting water for hydroelectric dams, clearing fog at airports so planes can land, and, as we just saw with Delhi, even trying to fight air pollution.
But, and this is a really big but, the challenges are just as massive. I mean, besides the whole does it even work debate, there are serious questions about the long-term environmental impact of spraying things like silver iodide into our atmosphere. There's also the risk of unintended consequences. What if you make it rain here but cause a drought somewhere else? And then there's the huge ethical question. Is this all just an expensive way to avoid fixing the real source of our problems?
So how does this whole global story play out right here in India? Let's bring the focus back home and take a look at our own history with cloud seed.
As you can see from this timeline, cloud seeding is definitely not new to India. States like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka with its well-known Project Warshadari, and Maharashtra, they've all used it in the past, mainly to fight droughts. What makes the Delhi plan so important is that it signals a major shift in why we're using it, moving from fighting drought to trying to fight air pollution.
And here's the official take on it. Delhi's chief minister, Rekha Gupta, called the whole thing a historic step. That statement really shows you how much hope the administration is putting into this technology, hoping it can bring some real relief to the people of the city.
And then you have this, a really sharp criticism from the academic world. Some IIT Delhi scientists called the plan a costly spectacle and even an ethical failure. They argue that it just pulls money and attention away from the real, hard work of stopping pollution at its source. For your exam, being able to articulate both of these viewpoints is absolutely crucial.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground, so let's boil everything down into a final rapid revision guide. If there's one slide to screenshot or take a mental snapshot of, it's this one right here.
Okay, let's run through it quickly. First, you've got to know your key concepts, especially CCN. Remember the three main methods, static, dynamic, and hydroscopic. Be ready to quote that 10-30% data point, but always mention that it's heavily debated. Use the Indian examples we talked about, like Project Varshadari and the New Delhi plan. Frame your analysis around that core debate. Is it a solution or a distraction? And finally, never forget to mention the key environmental risk associated with agents like silver iodide.
And that brings us to the final question I want to leave you with. This is something to really think about for your essays and interviews. As we face a changing climate, is cloud seeding a vital tool we need to develop, or is it a dangerous, expensive distraction from the hard work of solving our problems at their source? There's no easy answer, and as future policymakers and administrators, it's exactly the kind of complex issue you'll have to grapple with. So keep thinking and keep learning.